All right, what we're doing, for workbench.
Still not my turn.
Well, you said you were going to skip turbo tips, so I was going to do workbench real quick.
Do your workbench, pumpkin.
Just because a lot of times people come in with rotary cutters and I was like, hey, help me change the blade. Oh, my rotary cutter.
Oh, yeah.
And I just
You know what, that tool, the pink one? That's a hard blade to change.
I was just going to show you a couple things on changing blades. So this is going to be your older style. Most of your older style is a little bit easier to It's not actually easier to change, but you can see these are going to be very similar. One of the tricks when I change a blade, especially we're going to do this one because this one has a lot of parts.
You know what my trick is? Brent, can you change this
blade?
I agree.
So what I will often do, and I'm just going to show you some of the basic concepts. But when I change a blade for the first time,
keep the pieces in order.
Yes,
Because you never remember where they go back.
The order you take them apart is the order you lay them on the table.
And does the curved thing go up or does the curved thing go down?
What curved thing? Oh.
You're assuming whoever put that together the first time did it right.
So.
Oh God.
One of the things to keep in mind when you're changing a blade on a rotary cutter. Big concept is the blade itself, because you have all these extra spacers and parts here, a lot of that. The blade itself should almost always be against whatever the blade guard is, depending on, you can see this has got blade guard, but if you look at all of these, the blade itself is directly on a blade guard. There's no spacer between the blade and the blade guard, and very rarely, every now and then you'll see a spacer between the nut and the blade, but if it is, it'll usually come out together so you don't need to separate it. And that's the blade side. That's going to be pretty universal in most rotary cutters. Blade is always up directly against the guard, and then whatever's holding it in just goes straight through. There's sometimes a spacer under there, but that'll come out with that part. The back side is where everybody gets into trouble sometimes. You have a look on your face.
No, I'm watching. I'm learning because I do. I think I gave.
Because especially on these true cuts, you have this spacer here.
They never get it right.
A lot of the true cuts have this spacer here, and a lot of people accidentally put that on the front side between the blade and the guard. Yeah. But like I said, rule of thumb is the blade always is going to sit right on the blade guard because you don't want a space between that. And on this one, I rolled it up. That's going to go there. This one doesn't have that spacer. This is going to be very similar on the back, but it doesn't have that spacer. The big question is this little spring thingy. This is where everybody gets like, oh, what do I do with the spring thing?
Does it go up or does it
And then
go
some
down?
people put it underneath the spacer. If it has a spring, the spring almost always goes against this nut here, and up or down doesn't really matter.
Well, some of them have a curve.
Yes, they're all going to have a curve. They're a spring.
But it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter.
Oh,
if you look at this carefully, there's a spring. The idea behind the spring is that it's going to push. It's going to keep it's going to keep your nut from coming off. But the concept behind the spring, though, is to make sure that this doesn't come off in use, and you know that you've put it back together right if your blade doesn't wiggle. Here's the newer designs. These are going to be a whole lot easier to change. The way that these work now is like this one here, really easy. This just comes off, and the blade falls out. All that's doing is coming up. This one doesn't have a spring because the idea behind the spring is to keep the nut from coming out. So this one doesn't need a spring because there's no nut to worry about.
It doesn't have a nut.
Yes.
Okay.
And that just goes in. And again, same concept as before. If we take this out, this is going to go up against the guards. There's two guards on this one because this is a righty or a lefty, depending on if it's up or down. And again, this is going to sit right on top of the guard. There's nothing between the guard and the blade. That's going to be a very universal setup. And then this one here, you just clip that back in and away you go.
That's pretty. That one's
Now this is a kind of a newer design for the true cuts. The newer ones come into this, and I have to question who came up with it. Because that opens your guard there, but what did they put on the other side? The blade release. So if you get confused, oh, my blade just fell out.
Oh.
That's your blade release.
Well, when it does, you know what's happening.
Yes, I just questioned it though. It's just, but all you do on that, very similar to this one. The concept's the same. It's just implemented a little different. This comes out and it falls out. But again, when you're putting it back in, and then I'll use this one to show you a little bit. The blade itself is directly against the blade guard. There's nothing between the blade and the blade guard. This one does have a little spacer over the pivot point over your nut there, but like I said, it came out together. And you'll know that if you're missing it, because watch what happens if I put this together without that.
It doesn't move.
Oh, it'll move. It'll just,
Doesn't stay put.
yeah. So you've got that rattle. That's going to rattle. So that's how you.
Crooked cuts.
So that's how you know that you missed a point. But this was a kind of a rare one. You don't usually see this in two pieces. The reason that you see these on the true cuts is they actually make rulers that you can go in the groove if you want to. And that's the same. This is also the same. I just wanted to cover this with show people this because they're really simple. Again, the back, your blade release, blade falls out, and whenever you're replacing the blade, you always put the blade directly against the guard. And what's really cool if you save all your blades, I made this once.
What?
You save all the blades, and I think it's a 1/4 inch bolt.
Yeah.
1/4 inch bolt with washer spacers.
Uh-huh.
And then you hook up electrodes to either side. They make great plates for a hydrogen generator because you got a lot of surface area. The stainless steel.